Good morning. I'm noticing more and more that free and fast and accurate information is having a counterproductive effect on its value. It's the equivalent of inflating the money supply. If you gave everyone $1 billion, then $1 billion loses its relative value in the world and money itself would become worthless. But in the face of this inflation of information, I'm also seeing the value of wisdom rise dramatically. Wisdom is experience, it's being, and it's authentic. So, right now, I find myself thinking a lot about mentors and mentorship. And the thing I've come to realize about wisdom is that it scales down really neatly, but it doesn't scale up. Trying to scale wisdom up is risky. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're a professional rock climber and you've scaled a cliff face that's 100 meters tall. And then that gives you the ability to impart your wisdom to a junior climber who's going to take on their first 10-meter wall, their first 10-meter climb. And you could talk about the resilience that it takes. You could talk about how to channel your focus and focus on the next step, one step at a time. But inversely, if you've only ever climbed a 10-meter wall, you don't have any wisdom to impart to the person who's planning on climbing a 100-meter cliff face. You haven't experienced a challenge at that scale, and you're trying to map your experience to the much bigger challenge, and that means you're making a lot of assumptions. It reminds me of a show that I probably watched a little bit too much a while back called Mythbusters. Fun show. They would take an obscure urban myth like, can you float in bubbly water or something like that. Now, they'd test the myths and they'd do experiments and they'd always start at a small scale because the risks are lower. And if they've moved in the wrong direction, they can rehash without too much cost. But once they do the small scale and it points them in the right direction, they have to move up to a bigger scale. And that almost resets the risk profile and often introduces a whole new gamut of unknowns into the equation. So it made me realize that mentors are like a risk cheat code. In a mentor, you should find someone with experience and wisdom in having achieved things at a much greater scale than where you're currently sitting. They've already taken the risks. They've failed and succeeded, and now they have wisdom. To me, that is incredible, and that is like a cheat code in life to be able to access. Because as you know, like if you want to be part of progress, you have to be careful not to spend time reinventing wheels. You want to build on top of them. Now, I've had some mentors in my life, although many of them haven't been formal mentor relationships. These are people who have done things that are scaled up versions of what I'm doing. For instance, I might have gotten nervous speaking to a room of 50 people, and my mentor could speak to a room with 1,000 people. Now, I can tap them on the shoulder and ask if they have, half an hour spare to give me some advice. And believe me, when they speak, I pay attention to every word they say. But the reality is I can't be as indulgent as I want to be. I can't wake up in the middle of the night and ask them a question or have an idea that I want to run by them at any time I feel like. I have to be respectful of their time. There are social considerations there. So recently I came across something the growth faculty are doing in partnership with Decidr. And they've launched something called AI mentors. And when I first heard of that idea, I honestly had a question about where does it sit? Is it going to be added to the pile of valueless information that we all have access to today? Or was it going to be part of the wisdom, a source of wisdom that is going to be so invaluable as we move into the future? Well, let me tell you what I found using AI mentors. I've now had a very deep conversation with Andrea Clarke, who's an award-winning author and had an incredible career starting out as a journalist covering foreign and war correspondence. And she then moved on to some incredible experience with humanitarian aid. And She is one of the AI mentors on the growth faculty. Now, what was funny about that is I didn't have to worry about small talk. I didn't have to be mindful of her time. And I was able to ask her what it was like rebuilding in these conflict zones. And she told me something from her lived experience that struck me so hard. She reminded me about what education is like in these countries, how eager and desperate young people are to get an education and what it means to them and their families and their communities. Now, in my work, I work with a lot of Australian education providers, and we have it so good here that it's so easy to forget how deeply impactful that work can be. And it's something that I'm going to try to incorporate into my work to put more meaning behind education in Australia. I've also had long conversations with John Spence, a 2023 top 50 global thought leader, about some of the specific challenges I've had at work. And, it blew me away that he had been through something similar. And when he shared the story with me, it wasn't a management textbook. It was a real insight from a lived experience that mapped onto my issues perfectly. Now, the fact that I can access this wisdom on tap at any time for the price of like a iced coffee every month is insane. And it reflects what an amazing time we are living in right now. I'm going to wrap up like this. I'm a bit of a word nerd, so I was curious about the origin of the word mentor. Where did it come from? It was actually in Homer's Odyssey. Odysseus leaves his son behind to go on his famous journey. But before he leaves, he asks a wise man to be there for his son and help him to mature and make good decisions. And that man's name was Mentor. And when I thought about that, I kind of realized something, that what Odysseus did as a leader is he understood the utility of a mentor for the one that he's responsible for. And he delegated mentorship. Now, I find that super relevant today for business leaders, that your staff will always benefit from mentorship and you can't always be there for them. And in the world we're in today, with solutions like AI mentors, you can literally offer it at scale across your workforce. So it makes sense. Let's give people the thing that they will need more and more into the future, which is access to authentic wisdom.